Të nderuar shikues të euronewsalbania, përshëndetje. Mirë se erdhët në Balkan Talks. Është ky një cikël emisionesh i cili fokusohet tek tematikat më të rëndësishme, tek të cilat do të fokusohet samiti i Tiranës, që do të zhvillohet pra në mes të tetorit në kuadrin e procesit të Berlinit. Në emisionin e sotëm do të fokusohemi tek tema komplekse, por edhe konkrete e digjitalizimit dhe e konektivitetit apo ndërlidhjes, një prej prioriteteve kryesore të Bashkimit Evropian në Ballkanin Perëndimor, por njëkohësisht edhe një nga temat më të mprejta për sa i përket përditshmërisë së qytetarëve në këtë pjesë të Europës. Për ta bërë këtë bisedë, un kam kënaqësinë që në lidhje direkte nga Sarajeva të jetë zoti Darko Bërkan, i cili është drejtues i shoqatës së qytetarëve Why Not? Pse jo? Pra me bazë në Sarajev dhe vlerësohet si një nga organizatat jo qeveritare më të rëndësishme, jo vetëm në Bosnjë Hercegovinë, por në të gjithë Ballkanin Perëndimor. Mr. Bërkan, thank you very much indeed for finding time to talk to us about such a delicate but an issue with a huge impact in the region, and not only that.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Mr. Bërkan, I wanted to start at the beginning with a general picture regarding the priorities of the European Union towards digitalization and connectivity. In macro, the EU Global Gateway Strategy aims to mobilize 300 billion euros between 21 and 27 to invest in major infrastructure development around the world in order to boost smart, clean, secure links in digital, energy and transport, and strengthen health, education and research systems across the world. So it sounds very ambitious, but at the same time with a huge dedication. Do you agree?
Yes, basically, I mean, this is the buzzword of the moment regarding the EU, definitely is digitalization. It's something that needs to happen, and also, like, you know, there are both like positive issues around it where there's a lot of investment and there's a lot of things that are happening on the development side, but also there's a lot of threats that need to be taken care of in the digital world. So, like, you know, that combined together makes it very important, like, you know, for various reasons concerning the everyday life of the people, all the way to like elections and politics. So, like, it's a very important topic.
And do you think that the European Union, the Commission, and everyone else involved is paying due attention to what you just explained?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, definitely. Like, given the fact that very recently, in the past couple of years, there have been like a lot of developments, both on the regulatory and on the practical level regarding the digital space. So, like, on one side, there's a lot of investment in the digital, there's a lot of investment in connectivity, but on the other hand, there's, like, you know, a lot of regulation that has come up in the recent years that are trying to deal with the unregulations in the digital world and the problems that we are facing, such as like online safety, harmful content, illegal content that's been kind of a burden for both the EU and globally in general. So, like, you know, I think that EU has taken this seriously, and probably EU is one of the, let's say, front runners in this field, even globally.
Mr. Bërkan, talking about, as you mentioned in one of your answers, the new connectivity strategy of the European Union is new in two ways. And for the sake of this discussion, I'll split them in two. The first one is an attempt to internalize the logic of strategic competition when making decisions about connectivity. How do you explain it? Because it sounds complex, but at the same time, it has a huge impact on the everyday life of all the users of digitalization.
Yeah, I mean, connectivity is a very important process, and basically, like, you know, we are all, as you can, like, you know, to put it simply, as you kind of said, like, you know, we are all very connected in our lives. Like, you know, the way that our lives have changed in the past, only in the past decade, in terms of, like, you know, how much we spend time in the digital world means that we, for everyday existence, pure existence, we need to be connected pretty much all the time, and the investment in making it easy, making it available, making it like, you know, acceptable for everybody, and also making it safe as an environment for everybody should be the priority. So definitely, like, you know, I would say that, like, you know, connectivity is something that will continue to be the priority in everyday lives, and we do also as individuals spend a lot more finances and resources and money and time on being connected, and that needs to be appreciated also by the governments and, like, you know, by the institutions. So I guess, you know, for all of us, it's a priority, and it should continue to be.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to continue with a second step of this EU connectivity strategy. It is mentioned that it is an attempt to increase EU visibility through better branding. What does it mean, concretely speaking, for our viewers all over the Albanian areas?
Well, I mean, like, that will depend on how the EU treats the Western Balkans region in terms of, like, you know, what it will provide in terms of, like, you know, the help in getting better connectivity. We all can easily see the benefits of that on everyday lives, and, you know, like, by providing services, by helping our governments achieve better services, better, like, you know, availability of connectiveness for the citizens would actually definitely bring the potentially a good image of the EU, and you know, like, I guess the branding part of it is just, like, you know, a thing on top of that. But I think that the priority is, like, you know, that actually the people and the citizens see the benefits of the work that EU is doing or will be doing in the region in that manner, and then, like, you know, the branding part is easy, I guess.
And is it happening, Mr. Ballkan, this process of branding as we speak?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't say necessarily that at this moment it's happening. I think that, like, you know, we are in some sort of a beginning of the process, and, like, you know, we are still pretty much here, like, you know, as I like it to call it, like, you know, this version of Wild West when it comes to the digital space in the region, like, in terms of regulation, in terms of how the services are provided. It's getting better, but, like, you know, generally we believe that we as the Western Balkans need a lot of support in the EU, both in the expertise part and in the resource part, in order to make it better. And, like, you know, I'm guessing that the next period will definitely show how much of it will happen.
And finally, because we refer to the relations between the European Union and its concrete strategy towards the Western Balkans, I've got one more question, general question for you to better understand what is happening within the European Union. And in terms of its ambition, the declaration put forward by the EU Commission in January last year presents the EU's commitment to a secure, safe and sustainable digital transformation that puts people at the center, in line with EU core values and fundamental rights. It sounds very EU-like, but is there more to say in terms of the benefits that people all over the Balkans, but not only, will benefit from this ambition that the European Union has towards this important process?
Well, the commitment that you just mentioned, in my opinion, is probably the most important commitment of the EU towards the digital space. It means that, like, you know, whatever is happening currently, which is very unregulated, unsafe, people are feeling especially, like, you know, since the recent developments such as the pandemic and, like, the information insecurity that it brought, and then, like, you know, for instance, the events like the invasion of Ukraine, all of these things have brought us into a very uncertain digital space, information space, and basically this orientation towards the safety of the individuals rather than, like, you know, what it has been so far is by far the most important commitment. And actually the legislation that has been passed in the EU Parliament and that is being implemented now, such as the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, and the recent AI Act, show that, like, there is a commitment within the EU to deal with these issues. So far, obviously, like, it has been oriented mostly to EU citizens because, like, there has been no effects of that outside of the EU member countries. But, like, what we are hoping is that we will basically see the benefits of that here in the region because, like, we find these regulatory actions to be very positive and to be in line with what should happen in the regulatory space all over the world in the future.
I see. Mr. Ballkan, if I ask you, what is the EU digital agenda for Western Balkans? How would you define it? How would you describe it? Because it is ambitious, yes, but it has a lot of things to work on in order to make it function.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two sides of that coin. One side is actually what the region, both the governments and mostly the government, but also the citizens of the region need to do in that respect. And then, like, there's the other side of the coin is like how much the EU is actually prepared to, like, make Balkans a part of its own digital single market, because, like, we believe that actually only by kind of uniting it in both the regulatory and the practical way, at least for the digital part of the market, that's the only way for us to get the benefits of the regulation that's being implemented in the EU. So, like, in the future, on one side there is, like, the countries of the region that are also not equal in terms of how much of the digital requirements in the digital space they have implemented. And we need to, like, from our side, make ourselves more aware that we need to work on the things in order to be mature enough to accept the regulation and the practices from the EU. But on the other hand, the EU has to accept that the citizens of the EU are not safe online in the digital space unless also the same things imply for the Western Balkans. So, like, I think that we need to work both ways. We need to make the governments of the region aware that they need to do their best and pass legislation, make investments in the digitalization in order to be able to accept the benefits that the EU is bringing through the regulatory framework and through, like, the funding and resources that can be available for this region. But on the other hand, the EU needs to, like, understand that actually expanding its portfolio to the Western Balkans and making the digital space also safe for the citizens of the Balkans needs to happen in order for us to seek the benefits of that, because, like, just by doing things and not getting the same treatment as the citizens of the EU would basically be obsolete.
It is a very important message, the one that you underlined, Mr. Ballkan. But talking about this EU digital agenda for the Western Balkans, I wanted to ask you another question, please. At the Digital Assembly in Sofia, Bulgaria, the European Commission has launched the digital agenda for the Western Balkans. This aims, and I underline it, to support the transition of the region into a digital economy and bring the benefits of the digital transformation, such as faster economic growth, more jobs and better services. Is it ambitious enough, according to your perspective, with the expertise and know-how that you have?
Well, to be honest with you, like, coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, a country that doesn't even have a law on electronic signature, it is quite ambitious, like, and that's why I emphasize what I already said before, is that, like, we need to take this seriously, because, like, majority of people here are connected, they need it for everyday work, but also, like, in terms of the development of the digital businesses or businesses that are oriented towards the digital world, that are ever growing here in the region. We need regulatory frameworks here in the region. We need things to be implemented. We need, like, the infrastructure for that. So, like, definitely what you mentioned as a digital strategy for the Balkans need to be definitely taken seriously by the governments of the region, and things need to go towards making this, like, more a more friendly space for digital markets and digital economy, which is basically the future of all of us, whether we want it or not. and there will be more and more demand from the business sector. There will be more and more demand from the citizens, and also obviously there is demand from the EU side on this. So I guess that should be the priority of the region here, which I'm, to be honest with you, not seeing to the full extent at the moment, but hoping that the processes, the events, the meetings that are taking place, and the advocacy activities of the civil society and the business community should lead to that and to more synergy between the EU and the countries of the Western Balkans.
Okay, that's quite fair. Mr. Ballkanin, I wanted to focus now on the 5 key recommendations that your Why Not has presented, and the leaders, political leaders in the summit of Tirana will discuss among themselves. The first one, and I want to underline it, the first one is there should be a clear commitment by the European Union bodies to support full Digital Service Act implementation in the Western Balkan countries and allow the citizens of these countries to enjoy the same level of safety and protection online as the other EU citizens. Why is it so necessary?
Well, basically, to put it in plain words, we all spend a lot of our time on daily basis and do a lot of our work, do a lot of our private contacts over the things that are defined by on these places online that are defined by the EU legislation as very large online platforms and very large search engines. And basically the scrutiny over them in this region has been very little as it has been globally. The Digital Services Act actually prescribes measures and commitments that need to be taken by the very large online platforms. And
so the legal dimension should be strengthened and applied more aggressively, if I understand it well?
Well, basically the point is that actually we should have the same scrutiny over the platforms as the EU citizens do through the Digital Services Act, and the only way to make it happen, given that we are a small market and irrelevant in that field, is if the EU decides to expand its digital market into the region and make the regulations also obligatory to the platforms the same way that they are in the EU.
Another important recommendation that you put forward to the leaders in the Tirana summit is, and you underline, the Western Balkan countries should commit to assessing their digital maturity in order to be able to properly implement EU legislation within the digital package. Why is it so important to apply these rules and regulations into the countries that make up the Western Balkans?
Well, obviously, as we were talking about, there are different levels of readiness in terms of what is our digital infrastructure and what is the regulation in the digital sphere in different countries of the region. We should first assess that, make sure that all the countries are in line or are approaching the level of readiness in order to be able to implement all the rules and regulations that are set by the DSA, DMA, and the Artificial Intelligence Act and other acts from the digital package. And basically, I think that that's the minimum commitment that the region could have in this process if we want to seek the benefits of transposing that those regulations in the region, and also making the Commission and the platforms abide by them in the Western Balkans.
Mr. Ballkanin, if I can ask you a specific question, as you are an authority on these issues, which countries in the Western Balkans are more advanced, and which are the other countries that need more work in order to get closer to this EU legislation?
Well, I would start from my own country. Just as an example, I think that at this moment, Bosnia and Herzegovina is probably on the last place in the region when it gets to the digital readiness and and then the level of implementation of in the digital field. I would say that basically Serbia, Montenegro, Albania would be probably ahead of the others in terms of where they are at the moment. But still, there needs to be a lot of things done in all the countries of the region.
Is it a matter of political will or the explanation is the reluctance to move forward and fast forward, if you want?
It depends on country per country. Like, in Bosnia, definitely, everything depends on the political will, and the structure of decision making is very hard. So that's basically a kind of a reasonable argument for why Bosnia is where it is at this moment. For the other countries, you have to understand this is a very large and complex field. So there needs to be a lot of things done, and probably all countries in the region lack capacity in their administration to implement a lot of this. And also, in some cases, that has not been just the priority, but by EU putting this on the agenda as a priority, and even including the digital package in the acquis and in the actual necessary things that we need to do in order to be a part of the European Union, will help raise our capacities and will help actually put these things in the priority. So I'm expecting a big boost in this field in the next couple of years.
Is it because there is a lack of expertise in the countries of the Western Balkans, or again, I should stress, is it because of the political will?
Yeah, I mean, lack of expertise is definitely there. There's only a very limited number of people in the region, in the institutions that actually is kind of capable of understanding what this process is about and actually knowing what should be done in order to achieve the proper results. But still, I think that's a minor part of the problem. Bigger part of the problem is making a firm political decision and setting resources to do it. Because if there's not expertise in the region, there's expertise elsewhere.
True.
But in general, we need to set resources and priorities straight, and we need to make this a priority in our governing decisions, and then resources and expertise will come for sure.
That's true. Mr. Ballkan, let's continue with a third important recommendation that you have put forward. You mentioned the fact that the European Union and the Western Balkan countries should work together to find ways on how to expand the EU single digital market to the Western Balkans for mutual benefit. Of course, we understand well what does mutual benefit means, but how this EU single digital market encompassing the Western Balkans can happen, and how can you give it a boost through these political summits as the one that will take place in Tirana in mid-October?
Basically, that idea is kind of an ambitious and a new one, but it's not without precedent. Basically the EU is already talking about doing similar things with some countries like Ukraine or Georgia, and basically we find it very important to understand that actually there's no safety online of the citizens of the EU without these rules expanding at least to the borders of EU. So there you cannot fortify the digital space. There's no way to close the digital space if you, for instance, want to run EU elections in a safe way in the next year in the EU. You need to have the similar rules and procedures applied elsewhere, especially in the places from which this can damage the processes in the EU. And for instance, in the Western Balkans, you have a couple of countries that are speaking a language that's similar to one of the EU languages, and actually, you cannot make it definitely a divided digital market, because it is a one market, and we need to make sure that the EU sees that actually it is going to be a mutual benefit for both the EU and the Western Balkans if the digital market is unified in that sense.
Mr. Ballkan, and logically the following question is, this EU single digital market, can it happen before the EU political market, if you want, the accession of the Western Balkan countries into the European Union, which, as we know, will take some time to happen?
Well, there are two levels of answer on that. One level is that you can make an argument that actually the rules apply only to the EU countries. But if there is already a process started with the countries outside of the EU that are already potentially going to seek benefits of like expanding at least the digital part of the market, then obviously there is a way to do it, and like, why not then like, apply it also to the Western Balkans. And the other argumentation line is basically that like, by the time that the Western Balkans has any chance of being a part of the EU, the fast transformation of the digital market and fast transformation of our digital lives will happen in a way that like some of the damages that can be made can be basically reversible. So like if you don't act fast and if you don't act now, we might lose the momentum of the current things that are happening in the legislation on the EU level. And if you let it pass and let us wait for becoming a part of the EU to basically have a regulated digital space, like we might be in a spot where we cannot go back.
That's true. Mr. Ballkanin, another important recommendation says the regional governments should work closely with the European Union to demand from the very large online platforms and engines to commit, and I underline these words, to demonetizing disinformation, protecting users' cooperation with fact-checkers and researchers in ways similar to those of the EU's strengthened code of practice on disinformation, because we're talking about an area that it is extremely crucial with a huge impact in our part of the world.
Yes, the disinformation and misinformation is another aspect, like so it doesn't fall under the Digital Services Act in a way that it is not considered to be illegal content, but it is like an extremely potentially harmful content. And within the ESA, it's basically regulated in a way that there is a co-regulation or a self-regulation mechanism where very large online platforms and search engines, together with like fact checkers, members of the civil society, and the European Commission, are like making commitments through a different act that is Code of Practice, or the strengthened Code of Practice on Disinformation, where there is a set of commitments that the platforms and the search engines are making in order to downsize the threat of disinformation. Basically, what we are looking for and what is our recommendation, that the countries of the region, together with the European Commission, find a way of making a similar commitment of the platforms in the Western Balkans region, either through expanding the EU Code of Practice commitments to the Balkans, or making a separate Code of Practice or a co-regulatory mechanism for the Western Balkans that would make platforms commit to at least a part of the commitments they made for the EU.
Mr. Ballkanin, and your final recommendation underlines the governments in the region should, in their approach to regulation of illegal and harmful content, including the establishment of supervision and enforcement mechanism, refrain, and underline, refrain from adopting individual national legislation. So basically, you are suggesting that the rules and the regulations of the European Union should be copy-pasted and adopted in this part of the world. But does it depend a lot on the political will again?
Well, I mean, there are also like a couple of different things that need to be mentioned here. One is the thing that you already talked about. It is that basically, while waiting to become the part of the EU, we might go into these like processes that might be reversible and that might be even more harmful than they are, because like while not being able to get the benefits of the EU legislation, if like what we are proposing doesn't work, the local regulatory bodies and governments could like basically turn to more repressive measures in terms of like protecting the online space, because they cannot scrutinize the platforms, and then they might like scrutinize the citizens more than they are now, and maybe even like that can be a danger to freedom of speech, to human rights, to everything. So that's why we are basically saying that like until we like find a way how to implement the EU legislation and also seek the benefits of it, because just by implementing it we need also platforms to commit to similar processes as they are in the EU in order for us to feel the safety as citizens of the regulation. If that doesn't happen, maybe some countries might turn to more repressive measures, and we don't want that. That's why we are calling them to basically be patient and to actually work with the EU and with the EU institutions in order to make it possible as soon as possible.
And my final question, Mr. Ballkanin. Personally, what do you expect to happen in the summit of Tirana regarding this process, digitalization and connectivity? Do you expect a huge impetus, or should we be reserved in terms of ambitions?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, we are starting with a very ambitious start and ambitious proposition towards both the governments of the region and the EU. I think that if we show unity, which for Berlin process is all about the unity of the region. So if we as a region show unity in actually saying that this is something that we actually need, and that basically these benefits that we seek from the EU and the platforms are something that is crucial for the existence of people here and for the safety in the digital and online space in the region, then actually that's more than enough for me to expect. And then just to start the dialogue, we'll find a way. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles, there's a lot of regulatory obstacles, there's a lot of potentially a lack of will, especially on the side of platforms who are business entities, and we understand that. But generally, if we as a region show a strong will and togetherness in this, this might be taken as finally one regional positive process where we as the region are demanding something for our own safety, and that we might get it. So I understand that it's ambitious, but actually I don't believe that with the right approach we cannot basically make a big change here.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Darko Ballkanin, for your thoughts that you shared with the viewers of Euronews Albania. I'm grateful to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Të nderuar shikues të Euronews Albania, ky ishte Balkan Talks për ditën e sotme. Deri në takimin ton të radhës, nga unë Franko Egro, faleminderit për vëmendjen dhe miru takofshim.